Welcome back here to the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. Man, I'm so glad that you pressed play today, right here. We're having a ton of fun. Hopefully, maybe by now we are actually also publishing our Gill 1918 Project podcast. Hopefully, you're enjoying those. We'd love to have you participate in those podcasts as well, so we can continue to give voice to voice to coaches of track and field, high school and college there. I'm so glad to be your host, Mike Cunningham. I always stumble with my title is so weird. National Business Development Manager. It's a huge, big title, but basically I'm the Twitter guy and I'm the podcast guy. I'm just that guy, right? But I'm glad to be here and I'm glad to talk to today's guest. This is going to be fun because he's not a coach. Well, he's a former coach. He's a former addict, right? He's a former track coach, but he's moved into administration. And to me, that's super interesting to explore. You've heard me say before on the podcast that, obviously I love that you are a track coach, but I highly encourage track coaches to go into administration. A lot of important decisions about our sport are happening on that level. And I certainly would like to have someone who has a knowledge and passion of our sport being involved in those decisions. So we're going to learn more about that and that route from today's guest. Help me welcome from Fort Lewis College, the wise, the wonderful Mr. Shawn. I knew I was going to flub it, Shawn. Shawn Jakubowski. See, I've already messed up. Jakubowski.
That was great. That's
Jakubowski.
great. Yep.
The only grace I give myself is that, Shawn, I assume you have heard people butcher your name your whole life, so this isn't new. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah.
Yep,
Should have
absolutely.
gotten it right, though. I panicked under the pressure, man. Shawn, how are you doing, man? Thanks for being here.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
The first question, the most important question I'll probably ask all day, you're at Fort Lewis College there in beautiful Colorado. I'm a huge mascot nerd. I love to know, all the different mascots. I love to explore the trivia question of, which mascots don't end in S, like the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, the Illinois Fighting Illini, things like that. Most of them end in S. And I can't for the life of me think of what Fort Lewis College mascot is. I'm going to guess something like a ram or something like that. Now, what is it really?
So we ended in S. We're the Skyhawks.
Skyhawk. What is that? That's cool. All right, I like different
Yeah.
ones. What is a skyhawk? Some kind of
It's
eagle or
just a
hawk?
variation of a hawk.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you have I saw this on Twitter the other day, how mascots have gone from like, fun and quizzical faces to like, mean death, attack stares. Do you have like the attack Skyhawk mascot or what do you have?
Yeah, it's actually a pretty good logo. I got it
Oh,
here
there it
on
is. Oh
right there.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So pretty
Yeah.
cool logo. But yeah, but our mascot looks he's a friendly Skyhawk,
I
big grin on his face.
got it.
Yeah.
I think if I were to get into a confrontation with a skyhawk, I don't care if it's smiling, a grin, mean. I'm going to be cautious with a skyhawk. That just sounds like it would be trouble.
Probably, yeah.
All right, man. Well, I love it, man. Shawn, so again, thanks for being here. It's you were nominated, which is always a big deal to me that someone else thought highly of you and highly enough of you to reach out to me to have you on the show. And when I looked into your background, obviously coaching track and field is extremely important to me, extremely important to Gill Athletics, extremely important to our athletes that are out there. And then when I reached out and you were like, "Hey, Mike, cool, yeah, would love to do it. But I'm not coaching anymore. I'm in administration." And you were doing it. I read it as you were saying like, "Hey, maybe I'm not the right guy for you. If you focus on track coaches." And maybe to your surprise, I was like, "Oh, dude, even better. Like, awesome." That makes it more interesting to me.
Yeah, great. I just wanted to make sure you didn't have a surprise on the show and be like, "Oh man, I don't know what we're going to talk about now."
Yeah, right. Hey, so what are you coaching now? Administration. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
the shortest podcast in the world. Click. Right. No, I'm super interested to explore as we get to that part of your journey here. Why you went into administration. What are some of the differences you notice now? And you're in your rookie phase of administration, so you're still learning a lot of things. But what totally want to explore. What are some things that when you were a coach that now as an administrator, you're like, "Oh, I see how I helped my administrators," or, "Oh, okay, I see some of the things that I did that maybe frustrated administrators because now I get frustrated by them." So I'm super pumped to get to that part of your story and explore that and really help share it with other listeners, other coaches out there that, are thinking about administration of, should I go that route? But man, I'll miss coaching. I'll miss track, seeing what kind of the value set you have in your career and your career path as it moves forward now. I'm super pumped for that, man. I'm really excited.
Great, thanks.
Well, let's hop back into our Wayback Machine to start first, man. Let's talk about track and where it began for you. Assuming you were an athlete, where does track begin for you, Shawn?
Oh man, long time ago, probably middle school. Kind of that typical story, middle school gym class mile,
Oh.
test.
Mhm.
I didn't want to be a runner to start with. I wanted to, play basketball or, one of those sports. And I just was naturally pretty good at it at a young age, and went into high school and got lucky at the high school I was at. I was a cross country runner, but I had pretty good leg speed. So we had a really good 4x4 team. One of the guys on that team got injured and couldn't finish the season, so we had an open tryout, and I was just a 120, probably 115-pound freshman, and tried out and won the time trial, but they still put a senior on there. And they went to a meet, didn't do so hot. So they're like, oh, we're going to give this freshman a shot. We wound up running really well, broke the school record that race, and then went on that year to win state. So that was in
Wow.
Tennessee. That's where everything started, is
Okay.
in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Oh man,
And
you're well, not technically a Vol, but that's where the Vols are. You're a
oh yeah.
Knoxville kid. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and then from there, just kind of tried out played on the freshman basketball team that year, and came back out my sophomore year to play basketball. And coach looked at me and he was like, "Hey, didn't you win state in the 4x4 last year?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." And he was like, "You should probably just focus on track." And
Wait, wait, wait.
I took that as okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I'm wondering. Like, I'm wondering, like, okay, was he like being really altruistic of like, hey, man, you could probably contribute here at basketball, but man, obviously track might be future. Or was that his way of saying, hey, Shawn, so it's not gonna work out here, but it's obviously working out over there.
I think it was the latter of that. I mean, I played, but I was that guy that just got in because I was fast and got in the way a lot.
Right, right.
um, so yeah, I started running, just okay in high school. I ended up moving to the 800 my junior year, and won state in Double A in Tennessee in the eight, and the in my junior and senior year, I won state back to back in the 800.
Wow.
Um,
That's a big deal. I think especially in track, I know this happens in other sports because of fandom of other sports, but in track, I think we forget how hard it is to win. And the reason I think that is because we have 20 something events, right, on men and women. And so every meet we go to, there's a 100-meter winner and a mile winner and hammer winner and all this kind of stuff. And we sometimes forget, like, wow, dude, you won a state title. You won a couple of several state titles. That's huge.
it was a good experience. I still, I still talk to that relay team every once in a while. We can stay connected, and
Wow.
yeah, very good experiences. I was very lucky. Had great coaches, great mentors that,
So
helped me get there.
So what kind of high school athlete were you? And what I mean by that is, it's like I like to bust myths. I almost called the podcast the Myth Buster podcast. One of the myths is that, today's kids, 2025, today's kids, they don't know who the stud, the Olympian champion in their event is and all that kind of stuff. And I ran back in the 90s and I didn't know very many, and I know there's no excuses today with social media and stuff like that. Were you like for maybe lack of a better term, were you a track nerd? Like, oh man, I knew who all my competitors were, what the top times in the state, top times in the country. I knew who, what it took to win the 800 at NCAA's. Or were you like, man, coach told me to run, I ran.
No, I was that guy that just showed up and loved winning. I hated losing, and I just showed up, and I didn't care who was on the track. I was going to try to win, and I didn't know anybody's name. I didn't do any research. I just wanted to run and win.
Yeah, there's some simplicity to that,
And then I did turn into a track nerd. Obviously, I got into coaching, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
at the
exactly.
time, yeah, yeah.
Obviously. Tell me your relationship with coach or coaches. And what I mean by that is, again, were you just the guy that, you showed up for Monday for practice, I have no clue what coach is going to tell me. I don't care. I'm just going to do what he tells me. Or were you more inquisitive about like, hey, I wonder why we do, repeats on Monday and maybe a long run on Tuesday or whatnot? What kind of relationship did you have with like the training aspect of your coaches?
Yeah, so in high school, I didn't ask any questions. I just did what I was told.
Hmm.
I didn't really care about the whys or anything. That
Hmm.
obviously changed in college when I really started getting interested in it.
Hmm.
But in high school, my coach was had a very unique like situation growing up. My junior year, both my parents kind of moved on, like moved away. So I lived with my best friend my
Wow.
junior and senior year. And my coach was like a father figure to me.
Hmm.
And he was the one that I remember that conversation my junior year. He's like, we need to start, like, you need to go to college. I was thinking, military after high school. And then he really put it in my brain, oh, you're good enough, you can run at college. So I just pretty much trusted him and I just showed up and he would actually get on to me because there were some days that, I would, back then the mentality was more is better. And I
Hmm.
was just like, okay, I finished this workout and then I would sneak back on the track later and I would do more. Um, and he would get mad at me for that. And
Yeah.
I understand now, like, that more is not better, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just showed up and did what he asked me to do.
It's a weird dichotomy that we have specifically with our sport, right? Like you hear about basketball guys and, after practice, Kobe stays after and shoots 1,000 free throws, right? And everybody goes, wow, like that's why he's the GOAT, right? And all that kind of stuff. A 800-meter runner does their workout and then stays and does more repeat 200s or 400s. And you're like, dude, you're screwing up my training. Like you can't be doing it. It's this weird, like you want to applaud a guy who's like, man, I want to continue to work and work hard, but then you're also like, you want to slap him on the wrist and be like, hey, man, stay the course. I've got a plan. I need you
Yeah.
to do what I tell you. Yeah, that's pretty tough there, man. What so you weren't, because it's always interesting to me, the spoiler alert that we know you become a coach. So when you're a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid, I always wonder, and it doesn't seem to met out. I would have assumed, oh, a kid who becomes a coach when they're a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid, they're like listening to coach, like, hey, so coach, why this today? And hey, what are we doing tomorrow? As like a precursor to them coaching. And certainly some have. But we certainly see the same of like, man, I was 16 years old, bro. I just showed up. Coach said run. I say run. I do run.
That's pretty much what I did. Yep.
I love that. Unique aspect you mentioned there, Shawn, and I don't want to get too deep where you don't want to go to about living with your best friend and, so therefore, maybe their parents or and obviously coach, things like that. I love that. What a great example. I always say, a coach's superpower is they see something in someone else before they can see it in themselves. You gave that great example of, I was thinking military, so, I wasn't thinking necessarily college. And here's coach going, no, dude, Shawn, you're going to college. Like, this is what you need to do. So he saw that in you before you could really see it in yourself.
Yeah, that really, because I was an okay student. I wasn't great.
Mhm.
I was your typical high school student. I did what I needed to do to get by. But he really his belief in me and his like encouragement just really kind of like helped me with my, self-esteem and like, you know what, like maybe this is something I want to do. And, it started off running. I just ran to it because I wanted to be an athlete in high school and that was what I was good at. Cause
Right.
and it turned into a real passion because I saw his passion because he was a basketball coach, and then our my after my freshman year, our head coach had left, and he took over because he had two sons that ran, and I remember he told me later on he was like, man, I was nervous to take over because I had this state champion and I didn't want to mess you up. So he
Mhm.
just dove into research on how to, coaching track. He'd never coached track before. And he just started researching it. And that just like his passion towards it kind of rubbed off on me. And we kind of did it together. And it was a great journey. And he's still someone I talk to quite a bit as well.
Well, I love a good shout out. Let's pull the veneer back. What's coach's name here?
Rick Anderson.
Rick
Yep.
Anderson, man.
Yep.
Shout out to
He
Coach.
coached
Yeah.
at Gibbs High School. So still
Yeah.
lives in Knoxville. But he's the one that drove my passion that started it. So yeah.
I love that, man. Well, shout out to Coach. I hear that story 100 times a day, and it never gets old, of the coach that, works through it with the kid, or again, sees something in the kid that the kid can't see at that time. I love that, man. What a great, I mean, Coach Anderson's kind of the reason we started this podcast. I mean, I love that, dude. That
Yeah.
is so cool.
And that's where, like the biggest thing was like he treated me like, just I was, obviously I was the best runner on the team, and he didn't treat me like that though. Like if I messed up, he was quick to call me. He treated me like a son, like, hey,
Yeah.
like you're not. So I really grew as a runner, but he also helped me develop as a human. So I owe a lot to that man.
That's cool, man. That's very precious. I love that. Okay, so speaking of college, so it's your senior year. You've won a 4x4 title. You won the 800 in your junior year. Soon you're gonna win the 800 in your senior year. What are you thinking for college? Where'd you look at, and what was the idea? Like, what did you go into study? Like, what did you think you were going to become an adult one day?
Yeah, so I had that once I started to realize I could run in college. I had that like, oh, I want to go D1, like that mentality, right? So,
But you
uh,
you lived in Knoxville, like one of the best college towns and college programs, not only for track but football. I mean,
yeah,
it would be hard for you not to,
yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
So I eventually wound up like verbally committing to University of Tennessee, Chattanooga,
Hmm, gosh.
and it was on some scholarship money, but I really couldn't afford college. So my high school coach found this college up in Kentucky. It's a very unique college that's kind of structured for like the lower income based families. It's called Berea College. We were
I was,
NAI at
I
the
was gonna
time.
say, are you talking about Berea?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Uh-huh.
So he convinced me because he was like, well, "Let's go look at this college. It's 2 hours away. Let's go look at it." And I was like, "I don't want to. Like, I want to go D1." And went up. So he convinced me. So we went up there together, took the trip, sat down with the team and the coach, and I just really connected with that coach. He gave me a lot of the same vibes that my high school coach gave me. And I remember, sitting in his office and I was like, man, I'm in a predicament because I've already like verbally committed, but I really want to come to school here. So I wound up because they offered full tuition. So I didn't have to worry about any cost. And so all my room and board, everything was covered. So I ended up calling the UT Chattanooga coach, and he was nice enough to, he was great about it. He knew my situation, and he was like, "That's a great opportunity for you." So I ended up going up to Berea and started my career there, and started as an exercise science major because that's what I thought I wanted to do because I was like, "Oh, I'm an athlete, and exercise science kind of makes sense." Um, Ended up switching to industrial technology.
Hmm.
So made that switch and yeah, had a pretty good career there. I was on a 4x8 team because the NAI has a 4x8.
Right.
We were fifth in the country as my freshman year, so I was an All-American my freshman year. Had a great relay team that year.
Yeah.
I've had pretty good luck, I guess, as freshman. Um, but yeah, and went on and ran cross country and track at the college level. And my coach, like, I got very lucky because I still talk to this man like quite a bit as well. And he's a huge mentor of mine. Mike Johnson. He coached at Berea for 35 years.
Hmm.
And he really taught me, like, he helped develop me as a human, and he treated me like a son. And he took me in, and it's a very similar situation to my high school coach, and I just got very lucky. So I had two coaches that really were all about building relationships, and that's really kind of what drove me into wanting to coach eventually. But that happened later down the road. But yeah, so I had a great time in college and ended up graduating and was an industrial engineer for 5 years
All
for
right.
a
So
company.
pause there because I want
Yeah,
to delve into that a little bit, actually.
yeah.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. First of all, you know, when you told that story, there was a little bit of a part of it that it was kind of a throwaway, like you said it and moved on, but I wanted to bring it up. When you had committed to the moccasins, right? The Mocs, the UT Chattanooga, if I remember correctly, to go to Berea because that's what was best for you. What's Berea's mascot? I want to say like a bear cat or something like that. It's not.
They're the Mountaineers.
Okay, yeah. Uh, uh,
They do have a bear as a mascot, though.
that's what I thought. Okay, that's what I had down. Yeah, yeah. But I love the real maturity and emotional intelligence of the Tennessee Chattanooga coach, when you called, because think about it, you've been in this situation. A kid commits to you, you're filling out your roster. You're like, okay, kid, I don't have to worry about an 800-meter runner or wherever he was going to plug you in at. Like, you start having plans for that kid, and you called up to say, hey, I know I committed. I'm sorry, I'm changing my mind. I'm going here, and he was like, hey, best of luck to you. I know your situation. That sounds like what's best for, like, I just love that. I think that happens the majority of time, but we tell the other side where a coach maybe gets upset or maybe has the wrong reaction, and we tell that story because that's the sensational story. But the vast majority of coaches are like that coach, and it's like, you know what,
Yep.
if I'm doing it for the kids, then this is what's right for this kid. Why do I get mad? Why would I get mad? Bless them and move on, right?
And I was very lucky to, I was very nervous to make that phone call. I remember that. I was
Sure.
like, oh man, I don't want to make this phone
You
call. And the
let's
reaction I got was great.
let's remember, it's easy for us to forget you were an 18-year-old kid and we're asking you, hey, do a very adult thing, call another adult, give them bad news. There's no good news, there's no silver lining in this thing, right? It's all bad news. Do it with some level of maturity. Don't just call up and like, hey coach, I'm not coming, click. Like, that's a big ask for an 18-year-old kid. So of course I'd be more concerned if you weren't nervous. I'd be like, what's wrong with you, psychopath? You're 18, you're a kid. So I love that maturity on both levels, that you did it. First of all, you didn't just ghost coach, but also I love their response to it as well.
And it was back in the days before text messaging and everything too, because you couldn't just get
Couldn't
away
even
with a quick
text.
text message. You had to call. So yep.
I get it. I get it. The easy button, coach, not coming.
Yeah,
See ya.
exactly. I got a lot of those in my
Yeah,
career.
well, I get it. I get it. Absolutely. All right, so you go to Berea. So you start out exercise phys because you're an athlete, of course, right? What else are you gonna do? But you change to industrial tech. What is? Tell me more about that. I'm not. I don't know that I really know what industrial tech. I think I know because I think I have a few here. But what is it?
Yeah, so it really just sets you up to be any sort of like kind of foundation of any sort of engineer, or
Okay.
factory supervisor, anything like that.
Okay.
I got into the automotive field, but and again, I did have a unique path in college as well. And so my junior year, I actually ended up getting married and having a son. And that was
Wow.
really where, my coach really had my back and was like, he helped me with everything and just really helped me develop from, as a human, but not only as a human, like as a dad as well. And I owe, like I said, I owe a lot to him. And so yeah, so continued on after that and finished my junior and senior year.
Okay. Well, a lot to unpack there, Sean. Holy cow. All right. First of all, why industrial tech, automotive? And what I mean by that is like family members that were in that field. Like, what was your interest of that field?
Uh, Honestly, I took a wood shop class there and I really liked it. And I was like, I realized I liked working with my hands a lot. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. There was really no direct, like nothing really except for that class. And I was like,
Yeah.
this was fun. Like, let me keep taking classes like this.
Yeah. It may, I've said this a million times on the show. When you do 300 plus shows, you say the same thing over and over, basically. So I know there's a lot of you out there who've listened to actually every single show that we've done here. I'm sorry. You just keep hearing me say the same stuff over and over. The good news is I have a different person with me to say them to, right? But it does boggle me that we make, 18-year-olds pick a major that is going to affect their entire lives at 18 years old. Again, you're a friggin' kid. You don't know what in the world is going on, and like, hey, pick something that's going to affect you for the rest of your life. It's amazing. So I like that you got to go in and experience something else, a woodworking class that was like, oh wait, maybe this is like, I kind of enjoy this, and then went that route. That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. It was a,
Okay, Sean. So we're talking about a lot of maturity. We talked about 18-year-old calling a coach, giving them bad news, things like that. There is nothing that matures you faster, hopefully, for some of us, I should say, getting married and becoming a parent. And you did this junior year, roughly as a 20, 21-year-old. Sorry to say this, but kid, you're still a
yeah.
kid in
Oh yeah,
2021.
absolutely. I was very much a kid.
How did you, I'm gonna say, juggle being a new husband, a new dad. Oh, you're still running at a high level in for your school, like schooling, by the way. How did you like? How do you? How?
Oh, well, I had a very good coach that kind of, helped me through it all. And he helped me, with my time management. There's a lot of time management. Berea it's an intense school. It's a very highly academic rated school. And I just really buckled down on, kind of put the social life, aside and just really buckled down on track and work. And because everyone that goes to Berea gets a job on campus and they're
Right.
required to work 10 hours a week. So 10 to 15 hours a week. So, I just really focused on my work and my track and, being a good father and husband. So.
Dude, I struggle as a 48-year-old professional, of a parent of two and a husband of one. Uh, I struggle now today. I could not imagine. Like I think about my time in college. I was a goofball. I couldn't imagine like being responsible for someone else and a baby. Oh, and by the way, like if you'd have told me, hey, yeah, we got married, had a kid. I dropped out of track. Like I was working. I just couldn't do. I'd have been like, yeah, bro, of course. Like you're
Yeah.
normal. Good job. You did. I mean, this sounds, maybe a little hyperbole, but this sounds superhuman, bro. I mean, this is tough.
Like I said, I was lucky to have a coach that would work with me and he, helped. Like there was times when, I'd have to practice at a different time or,
Mm.
something like that. And he was all about it. And, he would show up at the track at that time and took time out of his day to make sure that I got my workout in. And yeah, it was great.
Life is about priorities, and if we're lucky, our priorities are academics and then track and then maybe a social life. And sometimes, those switch, and that's what gets us in trouble in track. You
Yeah.
have your priorities change drastically, right? Uh, maybe parent was number one, spouse number two, academics is still there. Did you ever consider dropping track? Had to drop to a lower priority for you. Did you ever consider like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to become a professional. Why don't I just focus on the job and the parent and the husbandry,
No, not one time. Not one time did it really ever crossed my mind to quit. I really had never quit at anything and I loved my team and we were very close. I loved my coach and what he had done for me. So I wasn't going to let him down. He made a commitment to me and I made a commitment to him and yeah, never crossed my mind one time. Nope.
bro, you're better than me. Uh, okay, so you graduate. Uh, you have an industrial tech. Is that what the degree was in?
Yes, industrial technology.
So before you already kind of alluded, you go into an industrial tech type job. I want to hear about that, but I'm not hearing during any of this of like, oh, I want to become a coach. Like coaching doesn't seem like it's in your headspace at all at this point.
Yeah, so once I got to college, I did start to kind of turn into a little bit of it. It was hard to be a nerd, like a track nerd, when I was in college because we didn't have a lot of like ways to look up results and follow other teams. So I didn't do a lot of that, but I got really interested in the structure of workouts and
Mm,
why we were doing the timing of them. So I did start asking more questions um, and it even got to the point where like I would sit in my coach's office and we'd kind of break down sessions and whatnot. So coaching was a little in my mind, but
yeah.
I didn't really think that because I was an industrial technology major, I didn't ever think that it was going to pan out. I was like, maybe one day I'll coach like high school or something like that. But really, I was just doing it because I wanted to better myself,
Right.
and I was just curious on like I obviously wasn't fast enough in college to be able to go on and do anything, but I was like, if I want to do local 5Ks and I want to do marathons, like I want to know enough to be dangerous and be able to coach myself. So I did start getting into like I started getting curious in college about training.
Yeah. But still went to industrial tech though.
And I did, I did. I
It's not like
still
oh, yeah,
not curious enough, but
you're
curious.
right. Yeah, not curious enough to stay with exercise phys. Right.
Yep.
I get it. I get it. And that's what I do love about this podcast here and the guests we have is, if you were to have asked, hey, for Shawn to go into coaching, exercise phys major or industrial tech, and they're like, well, of course, exercise. Like he had to. Like that's how you. It's like no, I love the different majors and different paths to get to where we are today and through the
Yep.
coaching journey. So that's really cool. Okay, so you get an industrial tech degree. You're a father. You're a husband. What's the first? And coaching's not really. It's not like that's the okay. I'm going to become a coach at this point. What's the job? What do we do after college?
Yeah, so my first initial, because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this degree. Like, I don't really know what to expect after college. So went back to the military. I started thinking about that. So started looking at being like an officer in the Marines, and kind of went to,
Any family in the military?
yeah, my dad's side of the family is pretty,
Okay.
a lot of military over there.
I was one, not that it has to be, but it's like, man, this now the second time of like, maybe
Yeah.
that's the right route. It's like, man, somebody had to have had some, like, you had to have seen this somewhere. So, okay. All
Yep.
right. All right.
And so started really picking apart that, went up there for like, I had to go up there once a month, for some trainings and whatnot. And then I stopped at a career fair, that Berea had, and I was just walking around, and there was a company at the time, they were called Tokiko. They ended up getting bought out by Hitachi, whenever I was there. And, just went around, put in some resumes, and, I was sitting at the house one day and got a phone call, and they were like, hey, we'd love to have you come in for an interview. And I was like, oh, okay. So, and they were in Berea. Their manufacturing plant was in Berea.
Nice.
I went in for the interview, ended up getting a job offer, and I was a tool and design engineer. So pretty much it was a desk job, a lot of working behind the computer and
Yeah.
designing on CAD
It's
and
a CAD. Yeah. Yeah.
yep. And I did that for 5 years. And I was helping as a assistant coach, like kind of volunteer, when I could with Berea, the college that I went to under my coach. Um, and I got to the point where I'm not a desk, like a complete, like I don't like sitting behind a desk all day.
Mm,
And I was working a whole lot. I mean, the money was good, but I wasn't happy. Like I didn't feel fulfilled. I didn't really feel like I was making a difference. And like when I was coaching though, I felt like I was like making a little bit of a difference. And I was still, pretty young kid as well as maybe an adult at that point. But I could tell they were listening to me and they were taking my advice. And I was like, man, I'm kind of like a mentor right now, and this is a good feeling.
mm,
And I remember sitting down with my coach, and I asked him, I was like, what do I need to do this full time? And he was like, you need to enroll in a master's degree and get a degree relevant to like coaching's step one.
okay.
So I enrolled, I was already actually enrolled at Eastern Kentucky University. And I was taking some classes geared towards like an engineering master's. Um, and then I switched it and I went to sports admin, exercise science.
Uh-huh.
And I just kind of picked away at it as I was working, full time at the factory. I just kind of picked away, took like 3.5 years
Mhm.
to get a 2 year degree. But it was a 2 year master's degree.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I got that, and yeah, and just kind of started applying for a lot of coaching jobs.
So there was as you're working for Hitachi, uh, you hear this is something you definitely hear. We've definitely have busted the myth that there's one way to get into coaching as we've gone through this podcast. 300 different journeys into the coaching. But one that is very common is I can't sit at a desk, Mike. That's a very common. It's which is funny because again, spoiler alert, we know you're an administrator now, so there's more desk time. I'm assuming now than as a coach, but we'll get
Yeah.
there. So that's a common resonance from coaches is I can't sit at a job at a desk, and so you started volunteering, that passion, that mentorship of others. You started seeing that, and so now it sounds like the switch has been made of like, oh, okay, this is what I want to do. Hey, coach, what do I need to do to get that done? And then you start again, just kind of grinding, hard working, getting that master's degree to get the full time coaching job.
Yeah, we had a pretty good team. We were still NAI at the time. Bree is
Mhm.
now D3,
Right.
but we were NAI at the time. We had pretty good programs. We made nationals every year, and so um, I think that helped that I was an assistant at a good program.
Right.
But I just randomly, again, same thing that I did, with just randomly applied for, every coaching job I could. And
Right.
most of the time you hear about like coaches, they kind of have like when you get these jobs, they have like an in, right? Like
Mhm.
there's, they have like they know someone there or they
Right.
were an assistant or, they graduated there. I applied for a job in Tennessee Wesleyan,
Hmm.
in Athens, Tennessee, NAI program. They had cross country, but they were starting track. So they were hiring for a coach to start the track program. Never heard of Tennessee Wesleyan before, never been there.
Sure.
It was like, hey, that's like 45 minutes from Knoxville. I'm from Knoxville. This would be cool. So applied for it and went down there, met the AD, did the whole interview. Which that was nerve-wracking in itself because that's for, then I see on my agenda, I'm like, oh, meet with the president. Uh-oh. Like, like never done that before.
Right.
Never been in an interview for a coaching job before
Right.
and went in and hit it off really well. And again, got the phone call and they made me an offer. Come to find out, a few years later, I was their main offer got I think turned the job down, so they
Yeah.
went to their second choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoever got the job, and wound up at Tennessee Wesleyan and started the track program. Then never had to
Dude.
before and started that there.
Sean, this is fascinating. I mean, there's so many like twists and turns of, again, I've done this for 300 different people. You would think I would like be able to see all this stuff coming at this point, to be real frank with you. And this is amazing to me. So, first of all, jump back for just a second. So, you didn't ever join the military. I heard you say something about going to work out. So, you didn't actually ever join. Like,
Nope, I never
okay, okay.
did. Yeah.
One of my teammates here is in the an officer in the Army National Guard. Was Army ROTC at Indiana University and stuff. So I just have a lot of respect for people who do both. He's always going to drill, and it's amazing what my guy Nick does.
Yeah.
Um, so you very common, right? I get my degree, I'm going to be a coach, so I just apply everywhere. Right. I get that, right? It's very common. Tennessee Wesleyan calls. They're looking, this is very specific. They're looking for someone to start a track program. To start something, you probably should have maybe already done it, right? Like you've coached before, uh, and they hire you. Like, and by the way, let's dispel this real quick. When you say, later on you found out like maybe they had a first choice and you're the second choice. Isn't that life, by the way? Let's just be real
Oh
here.
yeah.
I'm going to assume your wife, you weren't her first choice. Like she probably had a boyfriend before you. When we recruit, we don't recruit one 800-meter runner. We recruit a two or three or four,
Yeah.
and we get the third and fourth choice sometimes. So who cares about that stuff? We just throw that out. That's no big
Oh
deal.
yeah.
It was meant to be here. What are you what are you thinking? Like, so you get the job, you go through that nerve, you're meeting the president. You're like, bro, I don't even know the president of Berea. Like, what do you mean I got to interview with the
Right.
president? Like, that's crazy, right? I get that. I couldn't imagine. So they call you, offer you, you accept, and then there has to be a little bit of reality like, okay, I've got to figure this out now. We have no track program. They want a track program. I don't even know what all that means. What do you do? What's the first thing you do to start the job off right?
Yeah, so I went in there in like I believe March is when I kind of started. So it was during track season, but I didn't have a track team. So I
Right.
moved down there by myself and because funny enough, I hadn't finished my master's degree yet. I was in my last semester.
Mhm.
So for that semester, I was twice a week driving 3 hours back up for class because there wasn't really online classes at the time.
Right.
So I moved down there and I just lived on the road. I drove to every single high school meet I could. I met every single high school coach I could. I talked to every single kid I could. And that first year, I believe I brought in somewhere around like 50 student athletes.
Wow.
Well, probably closer to because they already had cross country, so those distance runners were already there.
Yeah.
It was a small cross country program.
But didn't get started until March and April.
Well, cross country they had
No,
track.
but I'm saying
Oh,
all these kids you brought in, it's not like you've
yeah,
been cultivating them since the fall. You come, I mean, March, April, a lot of kids already know where they're going, or at least have it narrowed down to 2 to 3 to 4
yeah.
schools. Here you are inserting yourself brand new late to the process. You certainly don't start recruiting today in April and March. You know what I'm saying? Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I just kind of grinded it out. That's one thing,
Yeah.
I'm a hard worker. Like I just put my head down and get the job done, and I
Hmm.
that's what I did for those, all the way. I was signing kids in August, and 2 days before classes started. Like and this was before the transfer portal or anything
Yeah.
like that. So
And I'm assuming just you. There was no assistant, or definitely not. Maybe three,
not
four, or five
yet.
assistants. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was just me at the time, and luckily, like I knew a lot of the high school coaches there, and they knew of me because
Oh, right.
in
Yeah.
the area. So yeah, I just kind of put together a program, and kind of started young. We had a good year. I believe it was my first year there in track. We ended up winning the AAC Appalachian Conference in track. Um, and we had big numbers. I wanted to, like I said, we had a lot of kids on the team, and yeah, and then kind of built that program.
Did did
Very lucky
you
to have. Go ahead.
did you that first year and you win uh still just you or any assistants?
No, I did have an assistant at that time. Yeah.
And how did you like prioritize and divvy up the events? Meaning, like, did you have every event? So you had a hammer. Like, I'm trying to think of some of the more,
Yeah.
I hate to call them fringe because they are some of my favorite events, but hammer, pole vault, throws in general, I guess. Like, did you say, hey, we're just going to get as many sprints, hurdles, jumps, and distance kid? Like, how did you, or did you just go for everybody? Like, hey, I don't know how to coach the hammer, but I'm gonna sign a hammer thrower and I'll figure it out. Like, how did you prioritize that first year?
So we didn't have. So we pretty much had everything except for hammer and pole vault.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I'd never coached sprints before. I had a distance background. So the first thing I did is I went and, I had a few certifications at that time. But I went and did my USATF level 2 certification. And instead of my passion was endurance, but I was like, you know what? Like I know enough about endurance. Like I'm gonna go towards the sprints, jumps, and
Yeah.
hurdles.
Yeah.
And that's so I did my level 2 certification in that and started coaching sprints and actually had a lot of success there in the sprints. And yeah, I mean, that kind of really grew a passion for coaching sprinters as well. Actually had a shot putter that was pretty good as well. That, I didn't take it. I just kind of like my high school coach did. I just started reading and studying and asking questions. I go to meets and I'd stand over there at the throws pit and I would just listen to coaches and then I would ask them. That's what I love about track is like there's no secrets, right? Like every
Right.
coach, like you go to the USATF CCCA
Yeah.
convention,
Yeah.
you hear all the coaches that spill their secrets
Right. Right. Right.
and they were, oh yeah, let me to show you this, and this, and then I would
Yeah.
take it back and we would try it and
It
yeah.
it's funny, we're working on this new project. So we publish the Gill Connections podcast every Monday, and it's a long form. We're going to be here an hour and a half, hour and 40 here, Shawn, learning your journey. And yeah, I wanted something for Tuesday through Sunday, and so I'm starting this Gill 1918 project where we do talk about X's and O's and things like that. And they're 10-minute to 30-minute, and so I'm reaching out to a ton of coaches, to help give them a voice. And literally just today, one coach replied back, like, Mike, as I was thinking about like topics, all the topics that I know, like another coach already know, like I learned it from someone else. I don't have anything original. And I was like, well, isn't that track and field coaching though? I mean, let's be real. To do anything new today takes extreme study and science, and we're coaches, we're not scientists. So everything that's getting done, everything getting done today, we've all done it. We're redoing stuff that Clyde Hart back in the day did, and John Smith's been doing forever. We're just all kind of amalgamating it to our situation to do there. So I love that as you're sitting there at the shot put ring, like it's almost like I get this picture, like most of the time Tennessee Wesleyan's shot putter comes in, the Tennessee Wesleyan coach comes up and pays attention and okay, do this, do that. You were more like the other 9 athletes, like, okay, Laura, what's that coach saying to the all right, what is it? Oh, yeah, he said something about sweeping the leg. Oh, okay, I get what he said. All right, I gotta, say like you're like actually, oh, this is interesting. You're like every track meet is like a track clinic for you in some of these other events.
Yep.
That's so cool. I love that. That's really interesting.
It was a great, experience. Like I remember also kind of going way back, like when you were talking about like when I started this job, I had a great AD there and he supported us. And, we had since we had I had a lot of scholarship money, which helped me bring in all those kids. But I remember like walking in and he was like, okay, let me show you to your office day one. And I'm like, okay. And I walk in, he's like, here's your office. And there's a desk and a computer. And he's like, all right, let me know if you need anything. And I remember sitting at that desk and I was like, man, what do I do now? Like, I've never done this. Like, what do I do? So I just kind of, again, went around, asked questions. Hey, coach, like, where do you recruit? Like, going to the basketball coach, like, where are you recruiting at?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was one of those things. I was lucky. There was so they had a cross country team, like I mentioned, and their coach was actually the assistant men's basketball coach, was a cross country coach
Oh,
there.
wow. Yeah, sure.
So I kind of got to pick him apart and I figure out where he got his kids and
Right.
recruiting and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, went on and had some pretty good success there. Wounded up. I think our cross country program got it in the NAI. We got ranked as high as fourth. And we wanted, I think our highest finish at nationals though was 11th.
Yeah.
But we made nationals like three times, had a very women's program, was also top 25, I think 2 years. Indoor, my only national champion though that I've ever had as a coach was the 60 meter. One of my sprinters. But was very
Wow.
lucky to kind of progress at Tennessee Wesleyan. And funny enough, I had an assistant, but he was a distance coach as well. So we kind of wrote the distance workouts together, and then I did all the sprint stuff. And it
Right.
got to a point where we're getting pretty big, and our distance program was getting pretty competitive. And I was like, I need a sprints coach. Like I need to find a sprints coach. And one of my actually it turns out that I reached out one of the high schools that I was recruiting a lot from. He was very close to my high school coach, and he was actually one of the ones that recommended Berea for me because he knew about me in high school to my
Mm-hmm.
coach.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Sam Roberts, and
Mm-hmm.
I wound up at a high school meeting, was talking to him, and uh, found out that he had some interest in coaching at the college level, and wound up being able to hire him as our sprint coach. And you
Oh,
know, and Sam is in my mind one of the best coaches that I've ever worked with because not only is he a great sprint coach, he coached some very, very competitive distance runners at the high school level as well. So like when you think of like your 100 to 5K guys, like he knew it all.
hmm.
So I got to bring him in, and then again, that was one of those. I'm the head coach, he's the assistant coach, but I'm sitting here trying to pick his brain on a lot of things as well too. So it was really cool to build on that relationship. And Sam is
Yeah.
again like someone that I stay connected with, not as much as I'd like, but
Mhm.
yeah, definitely someone that I'll reach out to. And we ended up building a really successful, like kind of all around track program when you're talking
Wow.
sprints, jumps, and distance, and we kind of had a really good thing going there.
There's something special about building something, right? I kind of think about your background in, shop class and industrial tech of like, oh, like whether it's using your hands or CAD, it doesn't matter. Like there's a blank paper in front of you, a blank space in front of you, and then voila, there's a chair or a table or a tool or, uh, for track and field, kind of the same thing. Like that's kind of your mentality here with this Tennessee Wesleyan of like, okay, there's a blank slate. There's a little bit here. I got a cross country team. Okay, I'm not exactly at zero, but I'm certainly no better than 10 out of 100 right now. And you build this. I mean, first year you win the conference title. Now you build, you start hiring assistant coaches. The quality of the athletes get better. You get a national champion. I mean, that's got to be pretty special to build. I don't want to dismiss the cross country distance kids that were there when I say it this way, but you're building from the ground up.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely, started from scratch. Is they did have a cross country team. They were, any program that, I've learned this in my career that really just has cross country and doesn't have track. I mean,
Tough.
it's hard to recruit at a program like that because any good distance runner really wants to run year round a lot of the time. I mean, there's some exceptions, of course, but yeah. So they were. I want to say, usually sixth, seventh, eighth in the conference. And we wound up, being very competitive. We were in a great conference. So we had Milligan in that conference, who's very
Yeah.
competitive. Chris Lane is an excellent coach.
Yeah.
We had Brian College, who at the time Rodney Stoker was there, and he was, I mean, they were one of the best teams in the country at the time. And it was a tough conference to be competitive in, but I felt like we put our names in there, and we were running with these guys, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was a fun experience. It was great.
How many years total at Tennessee Wesleyan?
I believe like somewhere around four.
Did you, because I'm assuming you did not have facilities when you got there. Did you build facilities? They ever build you a facility, or how did you work practice as far as like track practice?
We had a high school that was about 3 miles away. We
Hmm.
utilized that track.
Hmm.
And then as far as a weight room, that school didn't even have a weight room at the time. When I was there, we used the local YMCA. All the programs had, so all the kids that got accepted to Wesleyan got a YMCA membership. And so we used the YMCA
It's kind of
to
cool.
live. It was a good gym. It was a
That's
great
kind of
gym.
cool.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so it was a pretty blue collar position
Yeah.
and I loved it. Like I
Yeah.
think that's what really honestly helped me like get to where I am in my career is
Hmm.
just really like getting thrown in it and just
Hmm.
like having to think outside the box early as a coach. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, well, we got a high school, but they got practice. So I had to develop that relationship and make
Right.
sure that, we were helping out and we were doing our part. So, I would meet with the high school coach and, hey, what equipment do you need? Okay, well, I can take care of this, this, and this, and really try to develop that
Right.
relationship. Because at any time they could be like, yeah, we don't want you to use our track anymore. Kick rocks. And then we'd
That's
be
right.
like, oh man.
It's funny you say, you had to get out, think outside the box. I'm not sure at this stage of your career you even had a box. To be honest, there's a little bit like you didn't know how to do any of this. You didn't do this for 10 years at somewhere else, and okay, I got to do it just a little bit differently outside the box at Tennessee Wesleyan. You had no box, man. This is all kind of just
Yeah.
brand new to you, man. That's a skill set. I'm not sure everybody could do that. Some people need a little bit more structure. Some people need, hey, man, I can go and help take this really good program and keep it going forward. But to build from zero, I mean, to have the hustle of like, all right, well, there's no one around. I better go see every friggin' high school, in a 100-mile radius. Like that's not everybody can do that, is built for that. So that's really a cool skill set that you had there. That is not. It's not identifiable. Like there's no ACT question that says, "Oh, look, this guy he can do this." He can go see every coach around. That's really cool. So you spend a few years there at Tennessee Wesleyan building up something special, hiring additional staff, which is always awesome when we support our coaches and our sport that way. But you leave. So why leave and where'd you go?
That was actually a very tough decision because I was very comfortable there. I had that was like I had my stamp on that because I got to create and I still follow them and I'm still a fan and
That's
I want to see them succeed and but really it was because so my coach, he'd been at Berea for 35 years. He called me and he was like, Shawn, like I'm getting ready to retire soon. And you've done a great job. Like, and I want to put your name in for this job. And he asked me if I'd be interested. And I was like, of course, because so he was going to retire, but we were going to co-coach for a year. And I took over. So I was going to be the women's coach. He was going to be the men's coach. And I was like, man, this is an opportunity for me to go work with the guy that got me in this, like the guy that I learned this from, because my whole like coaching philosophy is I build relationships. I love building relationships. And he's the one that taught me how to build those relationships with those student
so
athletes.
cool.
And so I was like, yes, of course. And then wound up doing a very informal interview with the AD there because I knew him as well, and wound up getting that job and went up there and got to coach next to my mentor for a year, which was a great experience.
As we're growing up and going through life, there's these forks in the road, these decision trees that sometimes don't feel like they're hugely consequential to our life. But then 10, 20, 30 years down the line, we look back and we're like, man, thank goodness I went left and not right. When you decide to go to Berea versus Tennessee Chattanooga, which we don't know what that path like. This isn't a Marvel movie. We don't know what the multiverse looks like if Sean becomes a mock, right? Could have been a lot better and it could have been a lot worse, to be real frank. A lot of times we look at those and go, oh man, if I'd have gone to Tennessee Chattanooga, man, I'd be blah 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 making so much money. I'd be the AD of Harvard or whatever. And it's like, the opposite is true too. You could have gone there, had a terrible experience, dropped out, and you work at the local gas station. That is also a possibility that we don't want to think about, right? But you make this decision to go to Berea and look what it brought you. It brought you a career in industrial tech. It brought you a passion for coaching track and field. It prepared you well enough to become a head coach of a new program, and then brings you back to become the head coach of your alma mater, which I always think is super special. I have a very big place in my heart for alumni who coach at their alma mater. It just, when you go to recruit and you tell kids how great that school is, like, you want to know how great it is? I went to school here. Like that's how cool it is. Like I didn't go somewhere else, and I'm telling you, this place is cool. I went here. It's awesome. I love that. What was that like coming back home?
Oh man, it was great. Like it was, I thought that I was taking that job to retire there. Obviously I didn't. But
Spoiler alert.
when I took that job, I was like, this is it. Like I'm gonna be that guy that's gonna be there for 35 years, like my coach. And it was just great to be able to work with him. We had a lot of success that year. So we were in when I went there, we were in that transition period of NAI to D3.
Mm,
So we were kind of in limbo, and then while we did wind up going D3, and so after a year, my coach did wind up fully kind of stepping away. And he always kind of, he still lived in Berea, so he was always at practices and stuff too, which was awesome. And then I kind of took over both programs, and we made a very like right away at D3. We had a lot of success. I had an All-American our first year in D3. And then we wound up qualifying a men's team for 2 years in a row. So the 3 years I was there, we had two teams qualify for nationals. I think we were like 28th and 23rd were our placings
mm.
there. Had a national runner-up in the steeplechase. And yeah, just it was a great time and loved it.
What's that like coming back for that first year while you were head coaches of your own programs? There's still a dynamic there, right? There's still like, dude, this guy's been here 35 years. By the way, he coached me as well. So there's some deference there, right? You're not the type of person that seemingly you're not the type of person that would come in and say, well, coach, you know what, you're on your way out. Thanks for the years that you coached me and thanks for helping me get this job, but let's move along, coach. This is Shawn's program now. You don't strike me as that guy. So there's got to be some deference of like, oh man, it's coach. What do you think, coach? What should we do? How's that dynamic? How did you handle that dynamic of like, man, he knew me as athlete first and foremost. He's seen me grow into coach, and now he sees me as an equal, air quotes there. You're working towards that. How did you handle that dynamic? How did he handle that dynamic?
I mean, we were really close. We'd stay connected throughout everything, and he had a lot of respect for me, and I had a lot of respect from him. And we just really worked well together. There was never one time, I can honestly say, there was not one time we had a disagreement.
Wow.
Yeah, we just worked well together and got along, and we
That
just ran the
takes
programs.
that takes like that to me. That tells me a story of humility from him. Because there's some assumptions here, I have to assume there are some things that you wanted to do that maybe coach didn't do. We didn't warm up this way, or we didn't travel to this meet and whatever. And so he has to have some humility of like, all right, well, let's see how it works out. Maybe Shawn's right. Maybe I've been doing it wrong. There's some humility there to like coexist in that because of how your relationship started.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way, his trust in me was huge.
Yeah,
He
trust.
never, yeah, he never really questioned anything I did. I never questioned anything he did. And we would talk, and we would sit down and dialogue, and we would always compromise. Like it was just we had that relationship where there was never like, oh well, we need to do it this way. Why you're doing it wrong? Like there was
Right.
never that. It was always we would dialogue, and we would kind of find a middle ground, and what we were both really happy with.
That's so cool. What about the transition from NAIA to Division III? So you're used to from you as an athlete, and even at Tennessee Wesleyan, you had scholarship and scholarship money. So you knew that you had to learn that, but you knew that route and what I have to do to make that successful. But D3, no athletic scholarships, all academic or need based. How did you handle that transition to that style of recruiting and managing a roster?
Yeah, that was Berea's an interesting place to recruit because you have to have really good grades to get in there. I think they have a 33, when I was there, we had like a 33% acceptance rate.
Cool.
So you had to have really good grades, you had to have really good ACT score, and you had to be in a certain financial like need.
Hmm.
So you really just had to find those kids that, were those lower income kids, like full, Pell Grant eligible kids that were wanted to run. And Berea's in a pretty good location for that, being in Eastern Kentucky. There's some poverty in those areas, in the Appalachian areas, and that's kind of what Berea was founded on. And so you just really, what my approach was is I was looking for those kids at these schools that were like these 17-minute, 17:30 kids. But when I called them, they were like, yeah, I'm running 20 miles a week, or I'm running 15 miles a week. And I'm like, bingo. I'm going to be able to develop you, because I wasn't getting those 15, 30 kids. They were
Right.
going to UK or Louisville or,
Mhm.
any of those other schools around.
Right.
So, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for those diamonds in the rough. And that's what
Mhm.
I learned from my coaches. We got successful. I think, but the year that my last year there, both years, I want to say that we made nationals. Because I got into I was a kind of a big nerd with it. And I was like, I think, and I don't know if I did my research right, but I think we had a 7-man roster at nationals. None of my 7 guys ever broke 16 minutes in high school.
Wow.
And I was really proud of that. I was like,
Yeah.
I love developing athletes. Like I love the development process and seeing them go from a 17-minute kid to, a 15-minute kid.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool. Okay. So you go to Berea, a transition year with your former coach. Now the program's yours. It's home. This is where, you have a great example in front of you, a guy that was there for 30, 35 years and retired. You're like, yep, sounds good to me. I could see myself doing that. But you leave in 3 years.
Yeah. Well, during COVID, it kind of like, so my third year, I believe it was my third year there, we had a really unfortunate event happen. Had a great kid. He was our team captain, and he ended up tragically passing away.
Oh, no.
And that was really hard on me. I was really close to him. I was close to the team. He was
Oh,
close to the team, and that was a big hit. And that was one of those moments when I was coaching where I was like, oh man, like that's I don't know if I want to do this. Like that was hard. And as a coach, you're there and you're helping your team. And I found like I was sitting there trying to, be there for them, and I didn't get time to mourn myself. So that hit really hard. And but we ended up having that season. I sat the team down. I was like, "What do you like? This is your season," because it was right before the season started, and they ended up wanting to have it. And I'm very proud of that team. They got to nationals, and they did it all for him. And we grinded that season out. But then COVID hit, and obviously that changed everything. And I already had this in my head, like, man, last year was tough. And I met my second wife at Berea. She was one of our athletic trainers. And we were in COVID, so we weren't competing, we weren't
right.
practicing. So she went to Fort Lewis, and she got a job opportunity in the middle of COVID to come back and be an athletic trainer here. And we'd always vacationed out here, and I loved Colorado, and we loved it. And I'd never been to Durango. And in the middle of COVID, it was like, you know what? Like, let's do it. Let's move to Colorado. Like, so I didn't have a job. I just resigned. And that was a tough decision because I did
Sure.
love my experience at Berea. I loved I never, you went back and you talked about the different paths. I never
Hmm.
thought about that other path that I could take because I feel like I never felt like I didn't take the right one.
Right.
Berea developed me, and my coach, the relationships that I made there developed me and to the person I am today. And I have a lot of respect for that school and what they're doing. And it was a hard decision for me to
Yeah.
make. But we were both really wanting to kind of get out west, and
Mhm.
we made the move. And yeah.
So, first of all, man, I'm so sorry to hear about your athlete at Berea. You know, coaches, you're there for your kids in so many ways and aspects, right? A kid starts failing academically, you're there to help them do. I know plenty of coaches who, well, all right, well then you're going to be in my office every night at 7 o'clock to study math until you get that. You're there. You've had kids that have lost parents that you've been a father figure, a parent figure for them. There's so many things that you're there for your kids. Um, having one of them pass away has to be. I know from my own, I coached for 10 years. I can put myself in those shoes, and I feel like I would feel like the most helpless situation. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. So, so sorry to hear that for you. So sorry to hear that for that kid's family and friends, and of course the teammates. You mentioned something that I think is important. It's not uncommon or unusual. I'm not shocked to hear you say this. Again, what does a coach do? You're there for others. So you poured your heart and your attention and your time into the kids. You've got X amount of kids that just lost, their brother, their teammate, someone they palled around with the night before, and you didn't, your words, I didn't give myself time to mourn. And that's what I hear a lot with our coaches. We're so selfless. We're giving to our kids in our program, and we forget that we do need to be selfish a little bit, not 100% selfish, but we need to be 51% selfish. We have to take care of ourselves, physically, mentally, socially, financially, etc. The better you can be as a coach, again, physically, mentally, socially, financially, the more you can give to kids. The more, longer you can be in this profession, the more you can give to them. So man, I'm just so sorry to hear that for you. I can't imagine how to process that. I can't imagine how you continue coaching. To be real frank, I could see easily saying, "Hey, you know what, man, I certainly don't enjoy that. Let me go do something else." So kudos to you, my friend, for being the leader for those 18 to 22-year-olds that maybe had it even harder than you, and you had it pretty hard yourself with this. Maybe had it harder than you because they're 18 to 22-year-olds. They have zero life experience mostly at that time. So I appreciate you being a leader for them in an unbelievably difficult time.
Appreciate it. Like I said, it was a moment I remember exactly where I got the phone call, what I was doing, and it's a moment I won't forget. But he had a lot of positive impact on a lot of us, and and honestly, like he's kind of the glue that kept that team together, even and we still, a lot of us communicate with each other, and he inspired a lot. One of the runners actually he inspired so much that he went on to just moved out to Flagstaff and grinded and trained, and he actually runs for Dark Sky out there in Flagstaff as a professional runner now. He signed his professional contract this year, and he says, it was that inspiration, like, because he had to keep going. So
Wow.
yeah, but
Mm.
I'm very proud of that team and how, they supported each other. But it is a situation that no coach should have to go
No,
through.
I agree. Again, I can't, I can only surmise how I would feel, but I just can't. I can't imagine. I know what we feel about our kids. We 99% of our coaches don't call our athletes our athletes; they call them our kids.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there's a reason for that, specifically in our sport. I know other sports have great connections, but boy, in track and field, because of what you're doing on a daily basis, I just think we sometimes have a little bit closer connection to the humans that are running for us. So, okay, there is no great way to transition, Shawn. Thanks for that. But you end up,
Sorry about
no, it's all good.
that.
It's all good. You resigned, moved to Fort Lewis, where wife is from. You've never been there before, and you got no job. Again, another, if I think about a theme that I keep hearing back and forth on this, Shawn, is humility, meaning, I'm sorry, in today's society, still today in today's society, it's not common that a husband will follow a wife, right? It'd be like, yeah, I'm glad you got that job, but we ain't moving. Well, I got no job. Like we got to stay here, and you humble yourself and say, all right, well, it's home for you and you've got a job and I'll figure it out. That seems to be what you are good at, figuring stuff out. So you move out there and what do? Do you get back in industrial tech or what goes on when you get out there?
No, so so my wife, she went to college here. She's actually from Washington, but she went to
Okay.
college here and loved it. No, I honestly I got a job as a physical therapist tech, and I was working at in a physical therapy clinic, like helping with exercises and wiping down tables and just trying to make some money, And I was also coaching like privately through a company called Team Run Run.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, that was what I was doing. Then
Wow.
So I did that for, a little bit, and then I was like, man, I do miss coaching. So I got in touch with the Fort Lewis coach at the time and ended up being a volunteer assistant again. So I went from, running my own programs, being the head coach to being a volunteer assistant, right back at
Yeah,
the bottom of the totem
yeah,
pole.
yeah.
But I just wanted to get back into it. And so then the next year, the women's coach actually retired or stepped down. And I applied for that job because they had a separate men and women's coach. So I applied for the women's job and I got it. And then kind of right back at being a head coach and got to develop that program. And we had a lot of success as a women's program. Had a national runner up in the 1500 at the D2 level. And had she was a four-time All-American for us. We made it, had a women's team finish 20th in the country. Um, and then the men's coach ended up leaving. So I took both programs over and ran both programs. And we were distance only, though. So we only had distance, but we did have track. And met with the AD and was like, I really want to up program. Like, I don't like going to conference and not being competitive. I'm a competitor. I like winning.
Mhm.
Um, let's talk. Like, what can we do to add sprints and jumps and so we put together a proposal together and we ended up adding indoor track and then we started recruiting sprinters as well. And then that year men's team had a great men's program that year. We ended up finishing 13th in the country in D2, which we're in the RMAC, and I don't know if you know anything about the RMAC, but
Oh, yes.
it's not easy to coach in the RMAC. We got some very great competition in the RMAC, and it's the who's who. I mean, the RMAC's probably better than a lot of D1 conferences. It's tough.
What a conference. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I wanted to be competitive in the RMAC, and I think, we wanted up fourth in the RMAC in cross country that year, which to me was like, we're losing to Adams State Western. I'm like, okay, like that's great. We're good.
I hate to say that's like winning, but with the guys in front of you,
Yeah,
dude,
like
fourth,
lines.
bro.
I mean, it is, yeah. So I remember coaching the RMAC and I'm sitting in my first meet, I'm sitting in the stands and I'm at Pueblo actually. And I look down and I'm like, I see Damon Martin and I've heard about this guy and obviously, and
Legend.
I'm like starstruck as like, and I'm coaching at the same level as this guy. So I like I'm like, okay, I gotta act cool because I can't. So, I go down there and like we have a great conversation and it's just like that's where it kind of hit me. It's like, man, like I'm coaching at a pretty big time level right now. This is awesome. So yeah, just kind of went that and again we had a lot of success. Fort Lewis is doing great right now, but I remember getting a phone call, sitting in my office, and I get a phone call from my athletic director, and he's like, "Hey, are you free in 10 minutes?" And I was like, "Yes." Like, and I'm sitting here like, "Uh-oh," like, but and he comes in my office and he explains to us the associate AD of external relations had left, and we had gone through some turnover in that position, and he was looking for someone to be there for a while, um, and again, I've been lucky to have all these right people placed in my
Mhm.
life, in my career. And he's an incredible athletic director that I really felt like I could learn a lot from, and as a mentor. And I asked him straight up, I was like, "You plan on being here for a while?" And he was like, "Yep." And I was like, "All right, give me 24 hours to think about it." And had some very big conversations with my wife. It wasn't an easy decision. I love coaching. I love everything about it.
Yeah.
And but I really felt like the administration route I could make a difference. Not only it's easy for us coaches to get caught up in our bubbles, like
Mhm.
but the track bubble and I started thinking, I was like, this is an area where I could not only help like track, but I could help the entire athletic department
Mhm.
and try to make a difference, to instead of 50 student athletes to 400 student
Right.
athletes. I accepted it
Wow.
mainly because I wanted to work under Travis, who has took me under his wing and taught me so much in a year. Like I'm a completely different admin like now. And I told him I was like Travis, like like I have no idea what I'm doing like in this position, right? And he was like, "Yep." he's like, but you're eager to learn and you work hard, and I can like we can get this to work. And yeah, it's been a great journey.
So how many years coaching track at Fort Lewis?
Three,
Okay. So
3.5.
this is the part I really want to, kind of double click into and really learn, because I know there's coaches out there that maybe have the same pattern that you just had, that you expressed right there about like, hey, I'd like, I love coaching. No one's going to say they don't love coaching, that's in the profession. But maybe I can help more people, or maybe I can help my sport better by being an administrator than as a coach. But it's coaching. Come on, guys. I got to be a coach. It's who I am, So I really want to like explore this. So what was you talked about having some long and maybe difficult conversations with your wife. I love that that's who you went to talk. Of course, well, I shouldn't say of course. You better, right? Talk with your spouse. But like, what were some of the maybe initial hangups, concerns that you had? Like, they could be very I don't want to call it superficial, but like they could be very like on one side, I'll miss being on the track or on the cross country. Like I won't actually be personally affecting 19-year-old Johnny or Teresa, right? Or they could be, on the other side of like, man, I don't like, I'm not a desk guy, and the administration is more desk than coaching is. What were some of the initial concerns, hangups that you had to, I hate to say get over, but you had to figure out?
Yeah, I mean, so of course I talked to my wife. I ended up calling all the athletic directors that I worked under. I ended up calling my mentors, my track coaches, and I just like my initial thought was, man, I've got a good thing going here. We're climbing up. We were one of the most, probably the most improved D2 program in the country. We finished 11th in the region the year before, and then we went to 13th in the country the next year. So we were improving at a
Yeah.
dramatic rate. And I was just, I was like, man, am I ready to like leave at this time? Like I signed Hannah Hartwell, who's one of the top D2 runners in the country at the moment. And I was like, man, like I just don't know. But and to give that up, something I know I'm good at, for something that I have no idea if I'm going to be good at.
Hmm.
That was a big,
Mhm.
but I just felt this like desire to get into admin and really, the travel, as a cross country and track coach, it travels hard on family. And because you're coaching cross country, then you're going into indoor, then you're going into outdoor, so you're just living on the road. So that had something to do with it. And like I said, the biggest thing was like I just felt like I could make a difference.
Mhm.
And then I said, I sat there and I thought, I was like, if I try this out and it doesn't work out, I just get back into coaching. So, um, so I just, I really, just kind of dove in. And I think, you mentioned what's the hardest part. So I ended up bringing in one of my old assistants. He ran at Adams, and it was funny because he took the head coaching job at Clark, and he was there for a track season. And then I call him like 6 months, he's there, and I'm like, hey, I need you to move back to Durango, man, because I need you to take this job. So got him over here, and then ended up getting really lucky with a hire, Grayson Key, up and coming young coach she was the assistant at Western, and ended up getting them. And the hardest part, I think, is right now is still seeing a lot of those athletes that I, coached, and just kind of making that transition, turning off coach mode, turning on
Right.
admin. And it's hard because, again, like the whole process was that develop like relationship building,
Right.
and I have a really good relationship with those student athletes, and it's been very hard for me to move on from that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And not spending my weekends. I mean, it's a good gig. Like you get to go out, and when it's nice outside, it's awesome because you're getting to watch track for a living. Like, come on. And that's been hard. Like, instead of being there cheering, like I'm there, like I'm on my phone looking at results. And then I've traveled a few times with the team, going to nationals last year, and in the fall. And, I'm there and I'm just watching them do their warm-ups, and I'm watching other people give them instruction. And I'm just like, man, like it's hard for me to turn off that coach mode.
Sure.
It's hard when they come to me and, they're asking me questions, and hey, like, let's get coach involved in this. So
Right.
it's, because I mean, obviously at first they came to me some
Yeah.
because they were that was what their comfort zone was.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, that's been the toughest part, I would say.
So you're in your first year, correct, of
Yeah,
administration.
right out of year. Yep.
What did you think? Typically, you have an idea of the job. It wasn't a complete strange job to you, meaning you had oversight ADs before, as bosses before, so you knew kind of what they did, and you don't know what they actually do until you sit down in that desk, but you know some things. What did you think was going to be like super hard? Like, oh man, you know what? I know administrations do X, Y, and Z, and that, yeah, I'm gonna have to really learn that. And it ended up being actually easier than you thought.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where like I have a great mentor and he kind of helped pave that path for me, and I never felt like I was like alone in it, like he's got an open door policy. I mean, I'm in his office more than I'm probably in my office a lot of the time, and just asking questions and picking his brain. And that summer, like, he took me to the National Athletic Directors Conference, and I got to learn. And instead of listening to X's and O's about track, I was listening to X and O's about administration. So, in my current role is I'm over external relations. So I deal a lot with the corporate sponsorships and trying to bring money into the
Hmm.
school. And I love that position because I got into coaching for the relationships. And as an external relations, athletic director in a small town, I'm developing those relationships, but I'm doing it with these, business owners, corporate sponsors, and so I'm still like building
Yep.
relationships. And so I feel like I'm being, I feel like I've had a pretty good year. We brought in a lot of new corporate partners, and I feel like my coaching career has actually helped me transition into this because of what it's taught me. Like, yeah, I'm not coaching track anymore, but the skill set of the organizational stuff, the relationship building, the talking, because it's just like recruiting, right? When I'm going out to a business, I'm
Hmm.
recruiting them to come in, and
Right.
I'm trying to get them to buy into me in the athletic department as a sponsor, just like I am when I'm recruiting. I'm trying to get a
Hmm.
kid to buy into me in the program, to come in. So I
Yeah.
just look at it, I try to do comparison like that. Like, so when I get nervous about these meetings and everything, I try to, okay, well, let's compare it to something that I'm comfortable with in track. And it's the same thing. I just got
Mhm.
to change some wording and, so I feel like it's been a great success, and that's something that I really enjoy doing.
What are you seeing? And again, you're circling on your first year here, not 10 years in yet, but when you were the coach, you're in the muck. You're and I'm talking about globally for our sport for college. You're in the muck. You're trying to get things done around the parameters and rules that you have. Now you have a little bit different aspect. You oversee the sport of track and field for your college there. What do you see? Now you have a different purview of things. What do you see our sport, our coaches, our athletes, our rules, regs? What do you see as an administrator of like, man, we make it, track, you make it difficult on yourself because of dot, dot, dot.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, like one thing that I've noticed is like I spent a little bit of time when I was at Berea in the administration. I was kind of like a sports information director a little
Mhm.
bit. So, I've always had a lot of respect for sports information directors. They got a tough job. I mean,
Mhm.
when they don't have home events, they're still working on the weekend because they have away events that they still got to write articles about, and they still got to, put releases out about. So always had a lot of respect for that position. I'll be honest, I didn't even like I wasn't really sure what an external relations AD did before, I got here and kind of developed that relationship with the person that was in this position before me, because he was my sport oversight.
Mhm.
But I think that the biggest thing is, I have a lot of more respect for people in the, because when you're a coach, you're just like, well, why can't we do this? It seems easy enough for me. Like, why can't we add this amount of scholarship money? But now, like, sitting behind the desk and seeing it, it's like, okay, now I understand. Like,
Mhm.
now, so I think it's helped me be a better sport oversight, because I can talk to my coaches and I can tell them like, hey, like, I've been in your shoes. I know what you're thinking, and I
Mhm.
know like that this doesn't make sense. So let me explain it to you from like a standpoint that that might make, and then they're like, oh wow, I never thought about it like that.
Mhm.
Um, so I feel like, that's where I've been able to contribute, especially like the golf program, the cycling program. And then, like I said, I'm lucky to have two great coaches, Grayson Key and Dalton Graham, that took over the programs here, track and cross country, and they are just constantly, asking questions and wanting to, learn. And they're young and upcoming coaches that are going to do fantastic. They're already doing fantastic.
Mhm.
But yeah, so just kind of that experience now that I feel like I have a better understanding. I wish I would have known some of these things when I was a coach, because
Right.
then maybe I'm like, oh yeah, I thought that was a simple ask, but that wasn't a simple ask.
Right.
Um, but I think that that's what I enjoy doing, is like helping these coaches understand a little bit about,
Mhm.
some areas that, hey, I've been there, I've done that, like, and because we have a lot of young coaches here, and I love this. My athletic director gives me this responsibility to help mentor some of these coaches, and now I get to help, like, other programs as well. So, yeah.
In coaching, and you kind of alluded to this, we have a lot of clinics, whether it's USTF CCCA convention or level ones, level twos, USTF Academy, Altus. We have a lot of coaching education to become better at the X's and O's and other things. What is there for ADs? Is there, I know there are some conventions, the National Association of College Directors and things like that. What is there for administrators that you guys have options for?
So the NCAA convention's a big one in January,
Mm.
and they do a lot of symposiums, seminars there. And then the NACDA that you mentioned, the
Right.
National Athletic Directors, that one's in June. That's a big one as well. I went to that last year and I just learned a ton. It's set up the same way, but it's you have like your external relations, like seminars, you have your communication seminars, you have your facilities and operations seminars. So you just kind of get to pick.
Hmm.
And that's what I love. My athletic director is just like, he's all in it, like high, like continuing education. And he, hey, go to some of these, but don't get caught up in all of them. Go learn about some of these too, because,
Hmm.
my eventual goal is, who knows? Like I love, the position I'm in now, but maybe one day I want to be a athletic director myself, and
Hmm.
I want to set myself up. And that's what I told him. I want to set myself up to at least have that possibility.
Right.
I can see myself in this position for a very long time, but I want to have that option where I feel comfortable enough to, instead of running a track program, like run an athletic department.
Right. That sounded very familiar to track and field, right? So I'm a sprints and hurdles coach, so I go and I, go to every sprint symposium and hurdle, but it's like, you know what? Maybe I should go to that distance or that throws or that jumps. I should make sure I'm learning what other people are doing, or maybe something that can apply back to what I may be doing. Because you never know, I may be coaching distance one day. You, the
Yep.
distance runner, distance coach, didn't realize you'd be coaching the sprints one day, for
Yep.
crying out loud. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very a lot of parallels to that. Um, what is, when is it also similar? So when you're an assistant coach, you can be a highly successful assistant coach for your entire career. There's plenty of them that do that, whether they have, self-realized, I don't want to be a head coach, or just never got the opportunity. But there is a head coach, position out there. Maybe for one day, is it similar in administration? You mentioned, external AD. I know there's compliance directors, there's ADs over, ticketing, and there's a lot of different facets there. Is it kind of the same thing? Like, I can be an administrator, I could be the best external AD for my entire career, or is it all like, do all administrators loft to be the head AD?
No, I think it just depends on, every individual's career goals. I could see myself, like I said, doing this for a long time, but I think ultimately, like, I'd like to be well-rounded enough to be able to, eventually become an athletic director if that's what I wanted to do, if the right position opened
Mhm.
up or something like that. But again, like, it's hard. The Durango is amazing. Like, I'm very lucky to live in such a wonderful place, and what we're doing here at Fort Lewis is incredible. And right now, I just love being a part of it, and it's been great. And the mentorship that my athletic director has given me is, wonderful as well. So I could see, like I said, I love the external side of it. So I could definitely see me doing external stuff for a very long time because it's just great, especially in a small town like this. It's just awesome. Get to go downtown, walking around. Oh yeah, like see people, like it's awesome.
Have you ever seen those memes or whatnot where they say like, the chances of a war hawk landing on your shoulder aren't large, but it's not ever zero. You ever heard those kind of,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So my question to you then is, that was a really tough way to describe this question. So my question to you, Shawn, is like, maybe Shawn going back into coaching, the probability isn't huge, but that opportunity, or that yeah, opportunity isn't zero. What's the percentage chance that you ever go back into coaching?
That's hard to say, but it's something I think about. I do like there's definitely aspects of coaching that I miss. There's some that I don't miss so much. But ultimately I'm still a coach at heart. I'm getting to coach other coaches now. So I mean, I wouldn't say it's zero. You never know. Or
I'd say
again,
it's never zero.
the
Right.
right position opens up. You
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah.
But or I do this for 3, 4 more years, and I'm like, oh, I do that. So it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
Definitely a possibility.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, wrap us up here. Kind of similar questions, but it is two different questions.
Okay.
What is your best advice to coaches today in how to work with their administration? And then the second question for that is, what is your best advice to coaches who think they may want to go into administration? So that current coach that, I'm not going to become an administrator, but I'd like to work with my administrator better. What's your
Yeah.
best advice for them? And then for that guy or gal that's thinking like maybe one day, what's your best advice for them?
Yeah. So, part one is I would say my best advice that I learned early in my career is know what battles to fight with your admin. You
Oh,
get a certain amount of bullets to fire, make sure they're on the right things.
okay.
Make sure that, whenever you have a big topic, like, when I wanted to add sprints and indoor, like I knew that was something I wanted to do here at Fort Lewis. And
Mm-hmm.
I was ready to, do what I needed to do to make that happen. And luckily, I had the full support of my admin. So know what battles, because some of those smaller battles like
That's great
can
advice.
really kind of like, ruin a relationship with admin. And you don't really want to do that because those admin are the ones that are going to really have your back on those important decision making.
Right.
So I would say, the biggest thing is know what battles to fight and then really prepare like statistics. Like if you want to increase, your roster size, if you're at a school that has like scholarships and you want to increase, because every student athlete that gets into a college, right, they're making the college a little bit of money
Mm.
because they're going to be paying something, most of them. So, what I did is I put together, a sheet and said, hey, if you give me X amount of more scholarships and more budget money, I can bring in X amount of dollars to this institution. So then when we go across campus and we present that, it's like, yes, you're going to be, and now you're putting yourself on the line. So you have to be very confident in your recruiting abilities because at the end of the day, if you don't hit those goals, you're going to be, you're responsible for that.
Right.
So make sure they're realistic goals. But when we went, it was like, okay, like I know I can bring this many kids in if you give me this amount of money. And that's what we did. And then we said, hey, if I do that, we're gonna make this amount of money for the institution.
Mm-hmm.
So really having like all your data and all your your spreadsheets ready to go and ready to present. And so not just going, hey, this seems like a good idea. I want more scholarship money. Like really do your homework and it's a give take. Like, hey, if you give me more scholarship money, I can do that. Like
Mm.
so anytime you go to your admin, don't just go with ask, like make it kind of that like do this and then I can do this. Like let's meet in the middle. And I think that's where I really learned, when I was working with my coach at Berea and we were working side by side, like I said, it was always that meet in the middle. Hey, we do this, we do this. Like let's find that compromise. And that's what really like admin really appreciate those coaches that work with them and like it's not just give give or take I'm sorry. It's like hey, we're gonna we're going to ask for this, but in return, like anytime you need snow removal or, anything like that, I got 400 or I got not 400, I got 100 football kids. Like we're out there, like,
Hmm.
so we're really looking for also those, like have your team available when the department asks you to like do, hey, we need all hands on deck for this. Be that team that is going to go out there and you're the first coach. It's like, you know what? Because track teams are huge, right? One of the
Right.
bigger teams on campus. Like, be
Right.
that team that's like, you need help, I got you, because
Yeah.
that makes a difference to admin. Like whenever they're wanting to really get behind the sport, like they're looking at those sports that are like going above and beyond for the department and not just getting caught in their bubble.
So I
So
heard be prepared for your ask.
yeah.
Maybe prioritize the ask that you give. You only have so many chips to play, if you will.
Yep.
So if you're going to make a big one, don't have already done like 10
Yeah.
mediums and small ones. And then third, I heard you say, um, remember that you're part of a team, the athletic department team. That yes, certainly you have your track team and you got your issues and concerns and things that you got to get done here, but you're still under that Fort Lewis College flag first and foremost for the athletic department.
Yeah, like
So,
I love when I go to basketball games and I see the track or I see the soccer team, they are supporting like, I'm
mhm,
like that's awesome. Like, we have a bunch of individual teams, but we are under one team. We are,
right.
Fort Lewis College Athletic Department, and we want
Yeah.
to operate as a unit, as a team.
I love that. Okay, so that second question then, there's guys or gals out there that are coaching right now that are like, maybe I want to go into administration. Maybe. What's your best advice for them?
What I did is I started asking a lot of questions. I started going to my athletic director because I started to get kind of, it was before the guy that got the job that I'm sitting in currently, like when he left, I kind of expressed a little bit of interest in that position. And then we brought someone else in and I asked to do different things in the admin, like, hey, what do you need help with? Like, yeah, so I would volunteer at, other athletic events or I would help out in different ways. So really just really get to know your admin and get a good feel for what they do.
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of different parts of it, right? Communications is completely different than external, completely different for compliance. I just really, like I said, the relationship building was big for me. So that's why I think I lean more towards the external, where some people really like the rules and regulations of their sport and they want to learn more. So they go towards the compliance. So really find that area that you're interested in and go to that person and ask questions and show curiosity. And if admin is something that you're interested in doing, don't be afraid to bring that up to your athletic director because they might not know. So whenever a position opens up, a lot of the time you want to hire an internal candidate because they're there, they're comfortable, they're going to be
Right.
there for a little bit.
Right.
Not saying all the time, but if they don't know, like most of the time admin think coaches are coaches. That's what they love doing.
Hmm.
But there
Hmm.
is a lot of coaches out there that have, interest in admin. But if you don't express that, then we never know that. So really just let it be known, like, hey, eventually, like, I'm kind of curious about admin, like, and show that curiosity and yeah, and let your admin know that that's something that you're interested in. And again, be that coach that's going above and beyond. And yeah, that's my best advice for that.
In coaching for track and field, there's nothing academically disqualifying. And what I mean by that is you can be an industrial tech major and become a coach. You don't have to have a master's degree and you can coach. Is there anything like that that is disqualifying for administration? Meaning, like, hey, man, if you've got a PE degree, you ain't going to become an administrator, or you don't have a master's, you ain't going to be, you don't have a PhD, you ain't becoming a head AD. Is there anything academically that's disqualifying in the administration world?
I think master's degrees are pretty preferred in the admin. I don't really even necessarily think it matters in what area. Mine was in sport admin, so it does have a relevant.
Right.
But yeah, I don't really think it matters. I think more of it, and not to say that it disqualifies you. It just probably, if you're applying for jobs and you've got your resume has a bachelor's degree and you're going against three people that have master's degree, you
Right.
might be a little bit behind.
Yeah.
So I'd encourage, if you don't have a master's degree in admin is something, I would definitely encourage, to start that process at least, whether it's online or in person. But no, I think that admin is just something again that you're in athletics, if you know how athletics operates and like you get a good understanding, like you can be a great admin.
Cool. I love that, man. Shawn, we're at the end of our time, brother. When I have a coach, I know how busy they are, especially right now in the middle of track season. An administrator, like I just feel like, oh, your calendar is already booked up and, time is very important because you got this and that, and you've got business owners that you're trying to talk to for things like that. So, man, I'm just so grateful for your time, grateful for your experience. I'm always, when I sit back after we're done with these interviews and reflect, it's so interesting. You know, I probably am the person that has had more in-depth conversation with coaches than anyone out there. If not, I'm definitely a top five, right? I mean, I've had 300 plus just on the podcast, super in-depth, long conversations. And of course, that doesn't count the conversations I have not recorded, right? And it just is always striking to me the path. There is no, hey, you want to become a coach? Well, here's point A, and here's what point B is, and this is point C. You became the coach. There is this, like, I love that you didn't go into coaching immediately after college. Like, I think that experience taught you some things, may have just simply taught you, like, oh, wow, I do have a passion for this sport and for the people who do that sport. You may have just needed that to become a coach, right? Instead of going straight into it. So I love that you started exercise science major and then switched to industrial tech instead of the other way around. You'd think like,
Yeah.
oh, well, here's his two majors, which route? And you're like, oh, of course he was industrial tech, and then changed because he wanted to become a coach. I love that you had that other route because I think that entire amalgamation, that I think early parenthood, I think starting a program at Tennessee, all that kind of the ingredients have created this really cool cake, if you will, that is what Shawn is today in 2025, man. I think the school, I think Fort Lewis is extremely lucky to have you. I think they are the beneficiary of that. I think the coaches that you are now mentoring, so you had a lot of great mentors for you. You get to now example that out to them. And I think obviously the kids, which are tertiary in this, right? Because it's something I had to go through as well, by the way. Coached for 10 years, came to Gill, and I was like, man, I'm not affecting kids anymore. And it's like, oh, I remember it was like a snap one day. I was like, oh, wait a minute. If I take care of Shawn, well, Shawn has 100 kids on his team, and take that out to now Tom and Tina and Courtney and Callie. Like, oh wait, I'm actually affecting way more kids now than when I coached. So I had to go through a similar, like, oh, okay, I'm still having a positive impact. It's just in a different route. And I just think Fort Lewis and whatever the future might hold is a great beneficiary of that with you, my friend. So I'm just so humbled and excited that you would join us today and talk to us through that very unique journey so far.
Well, I really appreciate you all having me. And again, like I wouldn't be where I am without those certain individuals in my life. So find your mentors and pick their brains, and because it helps a tremendous amount. And again, just happy to be at Fort Lewis. Love this institution. Love what we're doing here. So, hopefully you hear more about us soon.
That's cool, man. I love it. I love it. Shawn, again, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you guys for being here. Again, your time, you're busy, and, we don't make it easy on you, right? We don't do these 15, 20-minute podcasts. We do these hour and a half long bad boys here, right? So it may take you a few times to get the whole thing in, but the 15, 20 minutes are coming. The Gill 1918 project is real soon. And if you want to know more about that, hit me up on Twitter or text me, and all that stuff is in the show notes below. And otherwise, join us next week, man. We'll do it again on Monday. Bring you another amazing individual that has chosen the path of coaching, and maybe an administrator. I don't know. Who knows what we'll have on here. So join us next week. We'll do it all over again. Thanks, guys.